I have received a letter. It's from a group calling itself the Darklands Alliance.
The Darklands Alliance? What kind of rubbish is that exactly? What kind of unholy fiend has risen up this time?
The letter reads, "We, the Committee of the Darklands Alliance, hereby proclaim war on the Chaos Dwarves. We do so for the protection of our lands against the unholy filth that emanates from their industry, the tainted water that flows across the river, the black smoke that blackens the air. For these reasons, as well as crimes against the very world that we live on, we shall fight this war until the Chaos Dwarves are completely wiped out. We also declare the Darklands as our area of interest. Any and all factions that attempt to interfere in our operations shall be met with overwhelming force. Signed, Prince Imric, Tretch Craventail, and Helman Gorst, the Leadership Committee of the Darklands Alliance."
Have they gone utterly mad? A high elf allying himself with a vampire and a rat? I believe the world has lost all sense, not that it had much to begin with.
It gets worse. My spies report massive armies from the dwarves, Nurgle, ogres, and Skarbrand himself are preparing to march on the Darklands to cleanse them of the taint of the Chaos Dwarves. Kislev may soon join them.
Dwarves! Allying themselves with demons! They have become so insane that it boggles the mind to comprehend. We must really be living in the end times. In fact, the end times made more sense.
So welcome everyone, Costin here with my discussion about Drazhoath the Ashen's starting position in both Immortal Empires and Realms of Chaos. That little AI intro I put together for this video is pretty much true. If you're playing as the Ashen, you are going to fight all those legendary lords. You're going to fight Imric, you're going to fight Tretch, you're going to fight Gorst. And then later on, in the final battle, as we can see from the campaign preview for Zaytan, you do fight dwarves, Nurgle, Khorne, and throughout the campaign, you're likely going to encounter Kislev as well and have to fight them. So imagine being so despised that you end up fighting those kind of races in your campaign. Not even Skaven have that kind of situation. It's pretty insane and in a lot of ways bizarre. But then again, the Chaos Dwarves might be seeking to destroy the entire world in the Realms of Chaos campaign, so maybe it is deserved. We don't know. I feel these guys, like, their campaign goal is more Skaven than Skaven actually are. That's my sentiment at the moment. But anyway, Drazhoath the Ashen does start in the Black Fortress in both Immortal Empires and in Realms of Chaos. Now, looking at the Black Fortress over here in Immortal Empires, the Howling Waste, you have the Sentinels, and you have the Demon's Stump. We don't know if this is going to be changed in any way, shape, or form. Likely it won't be, and likely you're going to have to expand north. This isn't necessarily a problem until it becomes a problem. Now, expanding north does have some opportunities, of course, especially with this province, because if you expand north, then you can sneak up on Tretch and just wipe him out and take his province for yourself, and then go deal with Imric. It's best to deal with Imric at a low level, when he's at the low level in the campaign. Though, of course, dealing with Imric creates more issues because you encounter Karak Azul. You can imagine how that's going to go down. In fact, this is one of the issues I imagine the Chaos Dwarves are going to have in their campaigns. A lot of races hate them, especially those near their starting positions, because Greenskins hate them for obvious reasons. Dwarves hate them for obvious reasons. Like, factions of Order hate them for pretty clear reasons. Greenskins hate them. They might get along with Skaven, though that's always finicky. So you actually have no allies. Maybe Croesus, if you want to ally him, but good luck with that. So one of the things you can do is head north, take this territory, then come down here, deal with Tretch, take his capital when he's not there, or take Mount Silverspear when he takes it, eliminate his army, then take Crookback Mountain. People ask me, how do you deal with Skaven in a campaign? My answer to that particular question is, you should know what the campaign plan is going to be for every Skaven faction, and for Tretch it's pretty simple. He wants Mount Greyhag, he wants Darkhold, and he wants Mount Silverspear. That's what he does in every single campaign I've played in this game. He always takes Mount Silverspear. So if you can take him out, his main army out over here, then you can easily move to Crookback Mountain. Another key element is to move your army in a camp stance once the war starts, or if you're in a vulnerable position. But it's going to depend on the aversion level that you have with him. You might actually have a reason to ally Tretch if you can get at least one single reliable ally outside of the Chaos Dwarf race that might be the key to your success, because you certainly have a lot of enemies in this campaign situation. Because to the south you have Emmerich. Emmerich is the kind of faction that if you let him develop, he's gonna be a nightmare of a faction to deal with. The problem is dealing with him opens you up to Caracazul, though Queek is going to be dealing with them pretty quickly. But then again, we don't know how the relations are going to be between you and Queek. But if you're hoping for some kind of military alliance with Queek, yeah, I would temper those hopes, to be quite honest. Then we go east, you've got Kugaf, you've got Gorst. It's quite very possible, and I would say even likely, that you end up at war with Emmerich, certainly. Likely with Gorst as well, and maybe with Tretch. Greases could be a wild card, though he's not generally the problem, until he descends down from the mountains on your exposed territory with a full stack, while you're dealing with Emmerich, Tretch, Gorst, and others. That's the problem. But I would say heading west, dealing with Tretch, if he can't be reasoned with. If he can be reasoned with, one of the things you could do is take Darkhold, assuming the province stays the same, which it might. But assuming it stays relatively the same, you take the Darkhold, you sell it to Tretch, you can get a military alliance, and then go over here in the east to deal with Greases, and then come over here to deal with Gorst. To deal with Gorst, you're going to need a lot of range units, because he has a lot of regeneration melee benefits, so you're going to need the ability to take out his units from range. And after that, you can go deal with Emmerich through the Mouth of Ruin, and of course the Fortress of Vorag, and the benefits it provides. And then you have various expansion options. There's a lot of settlements over here. This particular area of the map is great to establish a huge amount of really successful settlements, because there's a lot of settlements that are fairly easy to defend because they're pretty close together. Of course, dealing with Queek can be an issue. You might want to ally him, or you might want to wipe him out. That really depends on you and the relationships you're going to have with Skaven. Personally, I would not trust Snitch, though it is a bit of a weird thing, in that if you can ally Skaven, they can be great and magnificent allies in your campaign. I know, very un-Skaven-like, but it is true. So you might benefit even from moving very quickly on Emmerich in this campaign, and also moving very quickly to at least take the southern worlds, Edge Mountains, and then helping Queek in his situation. Or taking this territory before Queek does, taking Caracate Peaks as well for the benefits it provides. It's going to be interesting to see how the situation is going to be for the Chaos Dwarfs. But yes, you are surrounded by enemies, or potential enemies, or the kind of factions who don't necessarily care for you one way or another. You probably have no faction except other chaotic factions that you can have positive relations with, so that means it's more likely that these factions declare war on you. I mean, look at this situation. It's bananas. You have 4 legendary lords in this area, and you're right in the middle of that area. How do you deal with that? You need to wipe some of these guys out. If not, wipe all of them out, but pick your fights. Know the situation. Greases does start at war with the ogres over here, and he starts at war with Caracazorn. You want him to deal with Caracazorn, because dealing with a full stack of fellow dwarves can be an issue. Or dealing with a full stack of regular dwarves can be an issue. So let Greases deal with that. He isn't really a high priority target at the beginning. Now bear in mind the pitfalls that exist over here. If you deal with Tretch attacking my Silver Spear, then you're going to encounter Skarsnik and or Forgrim, both of which hate you. If you deal with Emmerich, you encounter Caracazul, Queek, Skarbrand, potentially. If you deal with Gorst, you have Kugaf, who you might have good relations with, but the bigger problem you encounter is Xiaoming. This is one of those campaign situations when you're expanding in a direction, you gotta be mindful of the fact that you're going to encounter more enemies. One of the issues, one of the main difficulties in Alifanar's campaign, actually, and one of the things that makes it great, is that he starts in this position and he has a lot of enemies near him, so the more he expands, the more enemies he encounters. Now, he has all the tools to deal with them. I don't know if the Chaos Dwarfs have all the tools to deal with their situation. They do seem to have a good amount of power. But basically, in this kind of situation, how do you deal with Alifanar's situation might be how you deal with the Ashen's campaign situation. in that you have to pick your fights. You can't fight everyone at the same time. So what do? Well, you build a mobile defense force, especially on the eastern side. You expand west because the factions to the west are easier to deal with than factions to the east. In the sense that it's easier to deal with Forgrim than it is to deal with Xiaoming. Just plain and simple, Cathay is better than dwarves, more powerful armies. But if you expand west, you will likely also have to deal with Ungrim. There's a lot of enemies over here that we have. Now, if you expand west, you might also get some help from Astrogoth, assuming Grimgor doesn't wipe him out. You might also have a temptation in this campaign, dependent on how Grimgor is doing, to just force march north to kill him before he becomes out of hand. So gets out of hand. So move over here. Even if you have to leave a stack completely to just secure this province on the defense, do so. Let Tretch and Imric fight each other. That's one of the plans, because they will fight each other. They both want the same territory. Imric typically will win that fight, but you do have some time, like 20-30 turns or so. You do have some time before Imric does eventually crush Tretch. And if Imric does decide to declare war on you, the Black Fortress is a provincial capital, so it has a pretty substantial garrison. It's going to be difficult for Imric to take at. But effectively, if in this campaign, and you might have to try this campaign several times to get the hang of it, if you start seeing that Grimgor consistently becomes an issue, and Zaytan and Astrogoth are they're getting wiped out, which I think is unlikely early on. Typically speaking, with Legendary Lords, it takes some turns at least for that to happen. But if I were to bet money right now, I would say that it's far more likely that Grimgor wins this fight. So you might have a benefit in marching north just to deal with Grimgor, securing the north. Because if Grimgor wins this situation, if he beats back Zaytan and Astrogoth, then he's threatening the capital, then he's defeating two legendary lords that you can confederate in your campaign, creating a lot of headaches. On top of that, even if Grimgor doesn't win, he can certainly put a substantial enough fight that he can slow down their AI progress. And one of the things to be said is you have the ability, as the Chaos Dwarves, based on what we've seen in the previews, to confederate with Conclave Influence once you get to the highest tier in the Tower of Zar. So actually having powerful AI empires for Astrogoth and for Zaytan is in your interest in this campaign. For Astrogoth and Zaytan, one of their main campaign objectives would be to wipe out Grimgor quickly and then expand their empires. If you're Drazhoath, you do want to ensure Grimgor dies. Now, maybe Astrogoth and Zaytan can handle it when controlled by the AI. Probably depends on difficulty setting, all that. But if they can't, and you notice they can't, we'll see how these things develop when we get the DLC to come out. If they can't, it might be your decision to go deal with Grimgor for many, many reasons. It is one of the main annoyances in a campaign over here in the Southern Darklands that one of the main issues you're going to encounter in the campaign, and you know you're going to encounter it at the moment in the campaign, is that the Green Terror of the North will always come down, and you want to wipe them out very quickly. I mean, I'm not saying suicide force march a stack of weak units to the north, but no, expand to the north. Take this territory, take Karakazorn, prioritize taking them out quickly. In fact, that might be beneficial because you might have to end up fighting them anyway. Go for the Bone Road, go over here to the north. You will encounter Grimgor's armies, though they won't be as substantial because of Zaytan's starting position in the Valerie and the Granite Spikes. So if you can move quickly enough before he manages to wipe out any other major faction, then you can benefit from the wars he's going to end up fighting with Zaytan, maybe with Astrogoth, maybe with Kolic. Benefit from that, kill him, deal with him, take his territory, and then worry about other territory as well. Bear in mind the pitfalls over here in the west, because you have Vlad, you have Ungrim, you have Azag, Draika as well, Forgrim. So lots of factions that likely hate you over here. And in Cathay, of course, the Cathayan factions are not going to like you either. Bear in mind that Cathay will become more powerful as the campaign progresses. Usually they do end up winning the fight against Lokir and Snitch and Village. So that's one consideration to have in mind when you're deciding to plan your campaign. Now into Realms of Chaos, you are going to start with the Black Fortress, playing as Drazhoath the Ashen, though it is going to be changed into another province added to the Haunted Forest. The Haunted Forest is going to be renamed, or rather the Haunted Forest itself is probably going to become a one settlement province over here to the east. So the Black Fortress is going to take over as the provincial capital, the Dragonfang Mount removed, Pig Barter removed, and a new settlement, Flayed Rock, is going to be added here, based on what we saw in the trailer. Now, this position, having to deal with Helman Gorst from the very start, because they didn't mention him being in Realms of Chaos, and we did see his icon, can be interesting. I'd say massing range units is probably the way to go. You do, however, have also the issue of Greases, so you might want to take over the settlement very, very quickly and sell it to Greases if you want to make some non-aggression pact with him, or you could just decide, you know what, let's wipe him out, because Greases is going to come over here for Grimtop, and if you can take him out very quickly, then you can eliminate a major headache during the course of your campaign. Now, we have obviously seen some changes to the Darklands, but you do start here in the east in a relatively safe position, though they did also show at the beginning of the video a fight against Lizardmen. It's going to be interesting to see what they're doing with the Dragonfang Mount and this entire area of the campaign map. Maybe they'll add some settlements over here, maybe it will be worth going over here. I can't imagine it will be worth the effort if it's just a single settlement province, but we don't know how this province is going to look like. What we do know for certain is that the Fortress of Vorak is going to become a provincial capital, so it's removed from the Wolflands, it's added into a province with Pig Barter, and you're going to want to come over here, deal with Emmerich, and then deal with Tretch. So you are dealing with the unholy alliance of Gorst, Tretch, and Emmerich in this campaign. Whether or not it's worth dealing with the Lizardmen or having some kind of detente with them, that's a different discussion. Depends on how the situation is over here with this particular settlement, with this particular province that they're going to create over there. But regardless of that, you're going to want to move west, move into Mount Gunbad, or maybe sell that to Zaytan, and then move over north, dealing with Peak Pass, Caracadran, Blackwater, moving into Sylvania, and conquering territory along the way. The major threats to deal with over here are Scrag, though you also want to be wary of Catrin, because Catrin is likely going to have quite a few armies to throw against you, unless the other legendary lords have also made progress. I could imagine a scenario in which the Chaos Dwarves expand across this territory into Kislev, with like Astrogoth moving over here for the High Pass into Kislev, Zaytan moving for the World's Edge Mountains, and then Drazhoath moving for Peak Pass and Blackwater into Sylvania. And thus the conquest of the Empire in Kislev would begin. We have seen that they can take over a bunch of different climate types. But of course that isn't your only option. The real question would be, can you set up a proper provincial capital in the Ogre Lands? Because if you can, it might be worth actually conquering the mountains of Morn over here, going with Ivory Road, because you will want to deal with this element at least. You don't want this minor Skaven faction on your border. The regular dwarves of Karakazorn are going to be an issue, and then probably Greases, Grimgor as well, who may actually just start around here, based on what we saw, or somewhere around here in the Mountains of Morn. But to me, it seems that the most obvious course of action is conquer along the coast, then go into the Empire, conquer swaths of the Empire, especially Castle Dragonhof with its gold mine and the benefits it provides. Osland as well, though of course being vulnerable against Catrin, is going to have its own issues. And that is it about the Chaos Dwarves. We'll see how all of this plays out in practice, but for now, Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.